Sarah thought she was fine. The airbags hadn't deployed. She'd driven herself home from the scene. She had a little bit of neck stiffness, some soreness across her shoulders, but nothing that screamed hospital. The other driver admitted fault right there on the scene, and the police came and they backed up that Sarah was not at fault in the wreck. She figured she'd take some ibuprofen, get a good night's sleep, and call the insurance company in the morning. Well, 72 hours later, and she couldn't even move her head. She had shooting pain down her left arm and a headache that had not gone away for 72 straight hours. So she called an attorney. The attorney asked her one question. When did you first see a doctor? Well, Sarah naturally responded and said, well, I haven't seen a doctor yet. Her case did not go the way that she thought it would. Hi, I'm Ted Spaulding. I'm an Atlanta personal injury trial attorney practicing for over 20 years now. And the situation I just described to you is a very common one, waiting too long to initially seek treatment after a car accident. And the problem is it's one of these mistakes that can be costly. Not because people are irresponsible or they're lying about their injuries. Really, it's because they're human. They're shaken up. They want to believe that they're going to be okay. And nobody told them what waiting actually does to their claim. Let me fix that right now. Here's the problem. After a car accident, your body pumps adrenaline. That's not a metaphor. Your nervous system is in emergency mode, and adrenaline is a natural painkiller. You can walk away from a crash with a ruptured disc in your cervical spine, for example, and feel okay, other than maybe a little bit of soreness for the next couple of hours to the next couple of weeks. You can have a mild traumatic brain injury and feel nothing but a vague headache for 48 hours or more until the full symptoms hit. This is how the human body works under stress. It's not an exaggeration. It's documented medical reality. So when you make the mistake, I didn't need to go to the hospital, you might be making that decision on incomplete information. And unfortunately, the insurance company on the other side of your claim, they don't care why you waited. They are going to seize that and use it against you. So here's an example of what they may do with what they call this gap in treatment. If you don't see the doctor the same day as your accident, the insurance adjuster will argue that the gap proves you weren't really hurt in this wreck. They will say, if you were truly injured in this crash, you would have gone and sought medical treatment immediately. Every day that passes without documentation is a day they point to as evidence your injuries either weren't serious, weren't caused by the crash, or weren't real to begin with. Some adjusters will tell you point blank, we're reducing your offer because of this gap in treatment, the delay in getting treatment. Others will just do it and they won't even tell you that that's why they're doing it. This is especially damaging in soft tissue injury cases, meaning where we don't have a broken bone of some sort that's easily related to the wreck. We're talking whiplash, cervical strains, lumbar strains, nerve compression, and even herniated discs. These are real, painful, sometimes permanent injuries, but they do not show up on standard x-rays. They rely heavily on documented medical history to prove, one, that they exist, and two, that they are directly related to the crash. When there is no day one record, the insurance company then can build a case to say, this isn't related to the car wreck. It had to be something else, anything else other than the wreck and what our insured did. Here is a scenario that I see often. Someone skips medical care after a crash because they feel okay. 2 weeks later, their back pain is severe enough that they finally relent and see a doctor. The adjuster's response is immediate. We have no evidence this injury is related to our insured's motor vehicle crash. You had 2 weeks before you sought any medical treatment at all, and we have no way to verify causation. This is what you're going to hear from the insurance company. That argument carries some weight, and it is very hard sometimes to overcome. So you got to have early medical record treatment that documents what was going on as soon as possible after the wreck occurs. So when should you go? Well, here's my answer. Today. There is no wait. If you've already waited, get in. Same day is always my recommendation. Go to the emergency room, an urgent care facility, or even your primary care doctor if you have to. Even if you feel okay, meaning just a little bit of soreness or those sorts of things. Tell them you were in a car accident. Tell them every symptom that you have. What I tell people is no more and no less than what you're feeling, even if it's minor. And that way it builds a record. The record will say, patient reports mild neck stiffness and headache following a motor vehicle accident. Now that's in the record. That is a starting point to then show causation going forward, God forbid, if any of those injuries become more severe in the days or weeks later. If you genuinely cannot get there the same day, and sometimes that happens, the next morning is a practical outlier limit I would recommend. Don't wait a week. Don't wait until Monday because the accident happened on a Friday. You can still get into an emergency room or urgent care, even if it's over the weekend. 2 or 3 days, in my opinion, is long enough for an adjuster to start to say that the delay shows that it's not related to the wreck. And that seems counterintuitive. And oftentimes, yes, it is. We're going to argue the opposite, that a couple of days doesn't matter. And a lot of jurors agree that it doesn't. But the adjuster's still going to make these arguments and make your claim tough to resolve. Now, let me tell you what I suggest you say when you get into your first doctor's visit, whether it's ER, urgent care, or a primary care. You don't want to minimize your symptoms. On the opposite, you obviously don't want to over-exaggerate them either. I know this sounds obvious, but people do it constantly, especially the minimizing of symptoms, not mentioning certain areas, saying things like, I feel okay, just a little stiff, things like that. The doctor documents everything that you say. Patient reports feeling okay, mild stiffness. 3 weeks later, you have a herniated disc causing radiating pain down your leg. The record contradicts is what you're now going to hear, and those sorts of things. So you want to say more. You want to not just say you're okay or just stiffness. Now, if that's true and it's just stiffness, yes, you need to say just stiffness. But if you've got more going on and you're already having a little bit of indication of pain going into the leg or something like that, you need to tell the doctor everything. The stiffness, the headache, the ringing in your ears, the way your low back feels when you stand up versus sitting down or vice versa, tightness across your shoulders, the slight dizziness that you're feeling or difficulty sleeping if it's a couple of days later. Say everything that you're experiencing, no matter how big or small. A thorough medical record is what we're shooting for, and it's the foundation of your injury claim. Anything left out at that first visit, it can be used to minimize everything related to what you didn't tell them down the road. You forgot to tell them about knee pain. Well, then you end up having a big knee issue. Well, I did have it right away, but it's not in the medical record. So they'll use that against you to say you're not telling the truth about where this knee pain came from and when the pain started. Ask the doctor about imaging. This is another big one. If your neck hurts, ask whether an MRI or a CT scan right away is warranted. You don't want to do anything that's not warranted, and the doctor will tell you. Document the recommendation, whatever it is. If imaging is ordered, get it done. Don't skip it. If the doctor says, give it a couple of weeks, get a follow-up, and then maybe an MRI, now you know the plan. But then follow the treatment plan completely. This is where I lose clients. They go to the doctor once, they get told ice and follow up in 2 weeks, and then they skip the follow-up because they feel slightly better or because they're busy. The insurance company will use every gap in treatment as evidence that you recovered or you really weren't that injured to begin with. If you stop going to treatment while you were still hurt, the record looks like you got better when you actually didn't. Courts and juries look at treatment consistency. Insurance adjusters look at treatment consistency. It matters. If you're referred to a specialist, go. If you are referred to physical therapy, complete it. If your doctor recommends an MRI, get it scheduled. Every step in that treatment chain is documentation that your injuries were real, they were significant, ongoing, and required a lot of professional care. Don't be your own doctor. Don't stop in the middle because you're starting to feel better. I can't tell you how many times people do that. They stop and then naturally the pain comes back. Now they're going to argue, you stopped. Doctor told you to keep going, but you stopped going, and then you go back and you have this big gap of weeks or months in between. Don't do that. Now, what about timing relative to your legal claim? Georgia has a 2-year statute of limitation for personal injury claims, and that's under OCGA 9333. That means you have 2 years from the date of the accident to file suit, or you forever lose your ability to pursue a claim. But waiting to see a doctor doesn't pause that clock. Time is running from day one of the wreck, and the medical evidence you need to support your claim is building or it is not from day one. And it's based entirely on what you do in these first hours and days, in my opinion. The strongest cases I handle are built on a clear, continuous medical record that starts close to the date of the accident and follows through treatment to the resolution of those injuries. The weakest ones have gaps. Gaps are where insurance companies set up camp. They build their defenses in those empty spaces to try to confuse jurors that, well, maybe that gap does mean something. Don't give them that argument. Now, one question I get often, and is really important now in the tort reform world that we live in here in Georgia, is what if I don't have health insurance? Well, go anyway. Many medical providers will treat accident victims on a medical lien, which means that they get paid back out of the settlement or the verdict that you ultimately receive for those medical bills. You pay nothing out of pocket during treatment. Now, an attorney can help connect you with providers or companies that will act as the health insurance company, in essence, to make sure you can get treatment. But don't skip medical care because you are worried about the bill right now. You are damned if you do, damned if you don't. In Georgia, you are required to pay for your medical treatment up front after an accident. It is a reimbursement system. That's why you have a claim. You're claiming for reimbursement of all these medical costs to get treatment. So whether you have health insurance or not, you got to get the treatment regardless. So remember that. Cost of not going is almost always far higher in the end than the bill that you're trying to avoid. And here's one more thing I want you to know, and it's about pre-existing conditions, because insurance companies use this consistently as an argument against full compensation. If you had a back injury or a neck surgery prior to the wreck, or even a history of musculoskeletal alignment issues or muscle issues, the insurance adjuster will try to attribute your current symptoms to that history rather than the crash. Georgia law does not let them completely off the hook for this, even if that is your history. Under what is called the eggshell plaintiff doctrine, a defendant has to take the plaintiff as they find them. And so what that means is if you injure or further injure someone, whether it's an aggravation of a pre-existing injury, like we're talking about here, or it's an aggravation plus a new injury, you have to take that person as you see them. You don't get to use the fact that they had a compromised back to get out of owing them for what you did to make that complication or symptom even worse. If the crash aggravated the symptom and made it worse, they are responsible for that aggravation in essence. But here's the key. Your medical records have to show the baseline before the accident and the change after. That comparison requires documentation on both sides. If you have a history of back problems, tell your attorney and tell your doctor about the accident and, of course, your prior conditions. Let the medical record establish the difference. You need to explain how it feels different now than what it did before, how you were doing in the days and weeks before if you hadn't seen a doctor for a long time before the wreck, to build in that gap of how you were doing leading up to the accident. The distinction is what turns a pre-existing condition from a liability into a documented aggravation claim that you have a right to compensation for. So here's the bottom line. Car accident injuries are often delayed in how they appear. The insurance company knows that, and they use your delay in seeking care against you. Go the same day if you possibly can. Tell the doctor every symptom. Follow the treatment plan all the way through, and do not give the adjuster the gap they are looking for. And before you talk to the other side's insurance company, talk to an attorney. Consultations are free. You have no obligation to sign up, but the things you say in those early calls can affect your case in very, very different ways and make it very hard to undo later. Now that you know why getting medical treatment early matters, you need to understand, however, what happens next with these medical bills, because insurance companies have a specific playbook for using your own treatment costs against you. I have a video that breaks down the secret insurance companies do not want you to know about medical bills after an accident. It's right there on the screen. Watch it before you talk to any adjuster.